Hey, Grandmasters, Mike Amori here. I have a little tutorial video to help you with your chess and perhaps help any of the kids who may be playing in the upcoming tournaments because I'm also going to show how to stop the 4-move checkmate, which is so popular in the younger grades. So first, let's take a look at this game that was played by my student Jason with the black pieces, and he won this game. As you can see, this is the final position. The queen is checking the king, and Jason's queen could not be captured by his opponent because the knight on f4 was protecting it. So how did we get here, and why am I showing you this game? Okay, the game begins with e4, e5. Two very, very common moves that you see at your level. And before I show you how they got to that position, let's keep in mind what we're trying to accomplish during the opening of the chess game. We're trying to get our pawns, our center pawns, in play at this level. We want to use our center pawns. Every knight and bishop we try to find a home for, and then we usually castle the king. Now, strangely enough, you're not going to see Jason castle this game, but what you will see is that he was paying attention to his king's safety. So again, in the opening, use your center pawns, play in the middle, get the knights and bishops out, take care of your king. All right, let's watch how these players went about this. Really good move by white, knight f3, attacking the pawn on e5. Jason says you cannot have that pawn, and now bishop to c4. Very, very common again at our level. This is called the Italian game, although from here it can change names. You really don't need to worry about the names of these openings. And here Jason plays bishop to c5. So both players are following those opening principles: center pawns and minor pieces. White castles, and Jason plays knight f6. Great. White wants to get this bishop into the game, so they play d3. And here's where Jason took a timeout and played a pawn move that, of course, you don't have to do this, but I kind of like his idea. He played the move h6. So it's interesting, you know, you can pause your video and maybe try to figure out, why did white play d3, and then why did black immediately play h6? The reason is, for white anyway, is to get this bishop out, and Jason did not want the bishop coming here to g5, pinning the knight to the queen. Had that happened, it would not have been the end of the world. You can deal with that, but Jason just took a timeout and said, I don't want your bishop to go there. So white brought out the knight instead. Jason plays d6. Why? Same reason. He wants to get his light squared bishop into the game. And here, white, I'm not going to call this a mistake, but I will say that white spent their move with this bishop really not doing much with it. They played bishop to d2. Now, clearly it's not a bad move because the bishop has come out a little bit, but if you look carefully, it really can't do much more from d2 than it was doing on c1. If anything, maybe sometimes you look at moves like bishop to e3, which already creates a little bit of action. Do you see how those two bishops are facing off? Now, if this had happened, maybe you could have gotten Jason to take, and then perhaps after this move, now the white rook on f1 has a little more breathing room. This could have made the game a little bit more exciting, I think, from white's point of view. But by putting the bishop on d2, I think you're basically telling Jason, okay, it's your move, do whatever you want. So he does. He brings his bishop out, pins the knight. White is not happy about this move. I think they were worried about this knight coming into d4, bothering the knight some more, so they kick the bishop. In chess language, we call moves like this asking the bishop a question. So if this pawn could talk, the pawn is telling the bishop, hey, get out of our land here. You're on our side of the board. So you either take the knight and make a fair trade, or you better run away. So Jason decided to make a fair trade, and now white had the choice of how to take back, with the queen or with the pawn. So I'm going to keep this from the black side. Could you guess what you think would be the best capture for white? It's probably taking with the queen. And if your queen got attacked, for example, with this move, then you would have a choice to bring her all the way back to protect this pawn, or perhaps come to like g3 and attack black's pawn. That would also be really interesting. But that's not what happened in the game. What white did was they took with the pawn, which is kind of risky. I think white wanted to get this rook, perhaps, to the G line and maybe take advantage of the fact that Jason hasn't castled yet. So that's a good reason to take with the pawn, but the downside of that is that you've weakened a whole bunch of squares around the white king. So Jason immediately puts his knight's eyes on this f4 square. You see, there are no pawns that white has left that can control that square. Yes, there is a bishop pointing at f4, but if a knight gets in there, you may have to give up this bishop to get rid of it. White moves the king. As we mentioned, I'm thinking they wanted to put the rook on this line, and Jason played a really, really good move here. I thought he may have tried to castle, maybe even on this side of the board. He'd have to move his queen, but he brought his queen immediately out to h4. And what's interesting about this move is it attacks the f-pawn twice, so that if you move your rook, you may lose that pawn with check. And that could be pretty bad. So he doesn't like the idea that this pawn is attacked twice. So white played what they thought was a good move, but it turned out to be a big mistake. They played queen e2. So again, the reason for queen e2 is logical. It makes sense. You want to protect the pawn that was being attacked twice. But white missed the fact that the queen is going to be attacked. Do you see how? And again, always know how to pause your video so that you can stop it and think about these questions when you have time. Yep, the answer is knight to d4. So this is a real annoying move because this knight is attacking the c-pawn, the queen, and the f-pawn. So this knight is so powerful. So I have a quick question. In class, we always talk about the value of the pieces, and we say that pawns are worth 1, knights and bishops are 3, rooks are 5, and the queen we say is worth 9. My question to you would be, in this position, which piece is stronger, this knight or this rook in the corner? I think you would agree that right now, this knight is stronger. It's really, really a powerful piece. So if any chess coach ever asks you, what's worth more, a rook or a knight? I think you should answer, show me the position. And then you can give them the answer. Okay, so here, white moved the queen. And by moving the queen, they put her on the same diagonal as this bishop. And Jason simply moved his knight away for 2 reasons, actually. 1, the bishop now attacks the queen. And number 2, the knight has its eye on that weak f4 square. So as you can see, if you take the knight, you're going to lose your queen. So white saw that, and they played queen back, thinking they had everything here protected. The problem is this knight jumped into f4, which not only attacks the queen, but also threatens this really strong check. And there's no defense to this. White tried their best to get out by taking, but once you take the knight, or take back with the knight, you have the same threat on the h3 pawn, and there's really no way to defend it. White tried with a check. Jason simply moved the king, and now they put the bishop in, thinking the bishop will protect the pawn, but Jason just said, thank you for the bishop. And in this position, there are no more checks. So they move the rook, thinking maybe they can make an escape hatch for the king, but there is no help. It's checkmate in 2 moves. So you can pause your video. Check and mate. So that's how the game finished. Now, what I want to show you is, as I mentioned, some characters who play in these tournaments, I don't know, sometimes their dads or moms show them this, or an uncle who plays chess. They show them the famous 4-move checkmate. I'm going to caution you not to play this way as white. Yes, you can win a chess game now and then, but by bringing your queen out to this square early, especially at this level, is going to get you in a lot of trouble. I agree it's quite dangerous that the queen is out, but if white plays this way against someone who knows how to stop it, they're going to get in trouble. So I'm going to show you an example of that. You're attacking my e-pawn. I'm not giving it to you for free. It's not your birthday. So knight to c6. The knight protects the pawn. And now bishop to c4. And this is where you need to pay attention if you're black, because the queen and the bishop are pointing at the f7 square. If you play the wrong move here, you're going to lose the game. A lot of kids love to play things like knight f6 because that attacks the queen, and then unfortunately the queen takes the pawn. Bad news, you just got checkmated in 4 moves. Happens every tournament. But please don't play this way as white. You're going to say to me, but Mr. A, I've done this before and I've actually won quickly. What's wrong with this? Well, as soon as black knows how to stop this, you're going to end up with a bad position with white. And when you have the white pieces, you have a little opening advantage because you went first. You don't want to give that advantage away. So the correct way to stop it is to attack the queen with the g-pawn. And that is going to force her away. They usually put her here. Now they're trying for the 5-move checkmate. You see how the bishop and queen are still pointing at that f7 square? Well, we stopped that by blocking the queen. They're still not done with us. Now they play queen to b3, and they make what's known as a battery pointing at f7. If you've come this far, and you can remember these moves with black, if you ever want to stop these checkmates, just put your queen on e7, and that queen and bishop cannot do anything to this pawn. If they take, you simply take back with your queen. If they want to trade queens, you do so happily because you're up a bishop for just 1 pawn. That's not a good idea for white to do, all right? However, if you can remember queen e7, you're good. But if you can remember the even more powerful knight to d4, now you're not just good, you're actually winning the game. White's in trouble here. What a lot of players with white do when they see knight to d4 is they take your pawn anyway. And they think, man, what a bad move knight d4 was, because I take a pawn, check, the king cannot take the bishop because of the queen way up here. So the king just moves, and on the surface, it looks like black really messed up. You lost the pawn, and you lost the right to castle. But it's white who actually has serious problems. The main problem for white is the king is attacking the bishop, and the knight is attacking the queen. The only way to save both is to put the queen here. If, for example, you try a check here, that's not going to work because the king will simply take the bishop and you lost that piece. So what they do is they put their queen here, thinking everything is under control, but we play the move pawn to b5, and the queen gets deflected off that diagonal. The only game that I ever had, not me, but a student of mine, white put their queen here. They took the bishop, and then white tried this move to get their bishop out, and they ran into an amazing tactic. This part you don't really need to memorize, but if you ever saw a tactic like this, pretty fun to play. Bishop to b4. What? Another move that looks completely random. Well, you can't move the queen away because you'll be putting your king in check. So you might as well take the bishop. The problem with that is now the knight takes the pawn, forks the king, forks the rook, and of course you win the queen. All right, my friends, I'm going to leave it at this. Hopefully this helps, warms you up a little bit in case you play a tournament. Don't forget in the opening, fight for the middle, get the knights and bishops out, take care of your king. All right, my friends,